Welcome back guys! If you're watching this video, I assume that you've seen and enjoyed the first part, but if you haven't seen it yet, you really should. Anyway, let's continue. As you may remember, I must defeat Baroness von Bonbon on regular mode. I have the charge and the invincibility, but not the whetstone yet. I need 3 more coins to buy it. Oh sorry, I meant 2 coins. Our next one will be obtainable thanks to the next boss, Rumor Honeybottoms. For this one, my success highly depends on the position of the platforms, determined by the RNG, of course. Because of that, I have to beat the stage as fast as possible. If I run out of platforms, I can either move a bit to the left or dash, until I get stuck on the right if I'm not lucky. So, the battle begins with the policeman. It's a pretty simple phase, so I don't have much to say about it. Except that I must not take any hit while fighting him, because of the second phase. Here, Honeybottoms can either send the homing balls, which usually hit me at least once, although I can easily parry them, or the triangles, which have to hit me at least twice, making them very dangerous. And none of that would be too bad if she couldn't spawn right above me, giving me very little space to move and to dodge everything. And even when it happens, I shouldn't dash. Why? Because I need to stay on the left for as long as I have platforms to stand on, if I have any in the first place. Fortunately, she can also use this attack. She becomes a very easy target for the charge, allowing me to deal a lot of damage, unless I have to use the roundabout if I'm stuck on the right. When I eventually get to the last phase, I must deal as much damage as I can before she transforms, and I must have my invincibility to stay safe while I keep on shooting. But my chances can be ruined if I'm stuck on the right with the roundabout, as mentioned, or if she stays outside the range of the charge for too long, or if I can't escape her attacks, or if I get ambushed by a hand missile, or if I accidentally jump down, and I hate this stage. So, once again, I have to be very lucky through the entire fight, which, at least, can be finished without left and right. Now, as I said earlier, we have to get some coins for the whetstone. We can collect the next one by performing 4 parries in a row, which, during this challenge, is only possible in this stage. Just wait for the right moment, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then, we can talk to this guy to receive our coin, but we need 1 more for the whetstone. We will find it in the tutorial, which is beatable with the coffee, the invincibility, and 2 characters. So, let's try again. I said let's try, there we go. To get past this infamous wall, I have to wait for my super meter to charge automatically with the coffee, which takes about 2 minutes. Then, I must use the invincibility to gain a jump boost so I can cross the wall and repeat the process for this one. The rest is as simple as usual, and at the end, we can collect our 3rd coin and buy the whetstone at last. Before fighting Baroness von Bonbon again, I wanted to beat 2 optional challenges, the secret route of Botanic Panic and Treetop Trouble. They are not necessary to finish the challenge, but they're possible without left and right. So, let's begin with the route back. On the first 2 phases, I have to parry some worms for my super meter and to wait for a few seconds without attacking the onion. Then, as soon as Radish appears, I must spam him with the energy beam, the whetstone, and the charge until he's gone. As for the carrot, well, it's the same method as before, so moving on. Next, as mentioned, we have Treetop Trouble, a very long level. The beginning is pretty straightforward, so there's nothing to say about it. It's easy, until we get to this point. After grabbing the 2nd coin, I have to let the coffee to charge my super meter, so I can use EX attacks to move left. And just like for the tutorial, it takes a pretty long time. Later on, I must stand on the very edge of this platform and use an EX attack to reach the next one. After that, I can defeat both enemies as best I can before making more progress. When I reach the 3rd coin, I can grab it, get hit, and move back to this platform, because I cannot use an EX attack to reach this one, of course. and it takes over 2 minutes. Once I get on the platform, I must wait for another 2 minutes, use the invincibility jump boost to move up, get on this platform, wait for another invincibility, use another jump boost, and finally make it to the top of the tree. But then, I have to wait for yet another super art to grab the 4th coin, make progress, almost die, rinse and repeat. And from this point onward, the rest of the stage was done like this: waiting, invincibility, dashing, waiting. This may look lazy and lame, but keep in mind that if I die, I must reset the level from the very beginning, and I don't want that. So, after skipping the mini-boss, I get to the end of Treetop Trouble. I wonder how long this took to beat. Well, I'm happy that this stage is optional. At last, we can go back to Sugarland Shimmy, on regular mode this time. Since I already talked about this stage before, I'll make it quick. The Jawbreaker can be defeated with just a few charge shots, the Redstone, and that's it. The gumball machine is easy to beat as well, if I'm lucky enough not to get hit by any projectile. The waffle is also a piece of cake, as long as he stays away from me. The corn candy, however, is still troublesome to deal with. His fast movements make him a tough one to hit with a charge and to avoid. The same can be said about the cupcake, although I could defeat him at least once. As for the final phase, with invincibility, if I'm effective enough, just a couple of shots with a charge can take the Baroness down. After completing the second world, I wanted to deal with 2 more optional stages, and I decided to start with one of the worst stages in this entire challenge, Perilous Piers. This was one of the hardest and longest levels to complete without left and right. It took me between 7 and 8 hours just to beat this one. And yes, fortunately, it is an optional stage. So, what makes this stage so difficult? Everything! One important thing to understand is that, just like for Forest Follies and Funfair Fever, I cannot take any hit during the entire stage, except for specific spots that require it. Fantastic. As usual, the level begins with a few enemies, including very annoying fishes, which have caused many resets. For the first coin, I have to wait for a pink fish to come so I can parry it to get the coin, but if I dash too fast after collecting it, I can get hit. After going down the stairs, I must navigate on the crabs' platforms, grab the second coin as best I can, and watch for the urchins on the ground and the fishes coming from both sides. At the end of this section, I need to stand on the very edge of this platform, so I have to reposition myself when I move to the left, so I can reach the box, then the wooden platform. But once again, if I dash too fast... When I get to the first boy, I have to grab the coin, use my first invincibility, and defeat the giant lobster before reaching the next hanging box. Then, I must wait for my super meter to charge itself, and I have to defeat the lobster again. 3 times in a row. It's a bit long. So, when my second invincibility is ready, I can use it to dash in the water as fast as I can and reach this boat, where I find the next coin. But then, to get out of the cabin, you already know what I have to do. More waiting for EX attacks to charge for over 2 minutes. And when I finally get out, I have to position myself on this very spot, so I can dash to the tip of the boat after waiting again for my next super art. Then, I can use my third invincibility to skip this entire section before taking my first hit. Yeah, remember, it has to be my first hit. So, when I land on this octopus, I have to wait one last time for my super meter to charge itself, but not entirely, since I need an EX attack to reach the gem, parry it, and begin, at last, the final section of this bloody stage. I must be nearly perfect all the way through, and I have to be careful when I jump, because I'm automatically taken to the left when I'm in midair, making each parry pretty stressful to deal with. And if I miss a single parry, the octopus crashes, sinks, and forces me to reset the entire thing. Again! but when I reach the end, since the octopus sinks right before the exit, I must use my last invincibility to finally finish this stage. Unless I used my entire stock of EX attacks and took 2 hits on my way. So I can't have my invincibility nor 2 health points to reach the end of the level. And what happens then? So, this stage is entirely possible without left and right, but I don't recommend to deal with it. The waiting times, the abundant enemies, and the overall difficulty make Perilous Piers too long and too frustrating for this challenge. Next, the third and last Mausoleum, but this time I needed the coffee for Cuphead and the pea sugar for Mugman because this Mausoleum is the hardest one. I must use the pea sugar to make the job easier, or should I say possible, as a single player, and Cuphead's EX attack to move away from the urn, giving myself more time to parry the ghosts. Of course, the pea sugar isn't necessary with 2 people playing, but in my case, as you can see, it's crucial. Eventually, I succeeded and I got the giant ghost, which I ended up never using, so I cannot show it. Just before continuing the mandatory stages, I wanted to try Rocked Ridge, the last run and gun level, although I don't have much to say about this one, because, well, it's impossible without left and right. I did my best, but it's unbeatable because of the last part. So, the stage begins with difficult platforming and annoying enemies to deal with, and I have to charge my super meter with this invincible enemy without the coffee because I need the whetstone for the second part of the level. It's pretty long, but when I get used to it, it's fun. After that, we have the very straightforward third part. Nothing special to say about it. But then, we make it to the auto-scrolling part, and even with the invincibility, yeah, it's not possible. I even tried to get through it with the twin heart at full health and the invincibility. Not the full stage, just the last part. And it went like this. Sure, this wasn't the absolute best that I could do, but look at all the progress I still had to make. I was only halfway through. Rocked Ridge is impossible without left and right, period. Alright, time to continue the bosses, our next one being Dr. Carl's robot. This infamous level took me about 3 or 4 tries. I mean, when you know the right method, this boss isn't that bad. My usual method is destroying the antenna, then the chest door, then the chest hole, and finally the heart. After that, I can skip the second phase with a super art and get straight to the last phase. When you're already good against this boss, playing without left and right doesn't make a lot of difference. I'm not saying it's super easy, of course. It's just not very difficult for me anymore, although it still requires precision and focus. But overall, it was a fine battle for me. Unlike the very next one. What follows is easily the worst obligatory boss in this entire challenge, and I'm not kidding. It's not this one, not this one, not even this one, but this one. Sully Stage Play. Despite my advanced equipment, all the experience that I have with this game, and all the experimenting I did with different weapons and charms, and even with 2 characters, in vain, it took me around 10 hours to beat this single stage. This is where the RNG gets at its absolute worst. Let me explain. First off, I need the invincibility and the coffee for this fight. They are very important. I have to use the chaser at the start, then the roundabout when Sally gets close enough. When she shoots a fan at me, I must jump and use an EX attack to avoid it, or I can jump right before it spawns and make it land behind me. But of course, if she's too close, it doesn't work. Then, on the second phase, I use the chaser until she gets close again. When she attacks with the mice, which have ruined many attempts, as annoying as they are, I must activate the invincibility and dash only once to avoid them. Also, I have to watch for these baby bottles, which can screw my attempt if I'm not lucky. After that, I get to the second half of the battle, which is pretty simple, if, only if, 3 precise conditions have been met. Number 1. I must move in a very specific way during the first 2 phases. Basically, I have to use one EX attack, a second one, dash once only against the mice, and take one hit for a damage knockback to be positioned properly for the third phase and to deal more damage on the final phase. If I'm too far on the right, shooting up with the roundabout doesn't work and I have to shoot sideways, which is too slow for me. Number 2. I must not take a single hit, that's right, not a single one during the entire fight, except for the knockback, as mentioned, and the big wave, a pretty slow attack. And I swear that having very limited movements against a bitch who jumps all over the place in the first 2 phases, or even teleports right above me, is exactly what makes this stage so frustrating without left and right. Her behavior is based on random chance. Each attempt is different and unpredictable. I have to be very lucky for the entire fight, otherwise even the best skills in the world won't save me. Number 3. I must watch my super meter and make sure that my second invincibility is ready just in time for the final phase, which is why the coffee is so important. To manage my super meter properly, I have to use only 2 EX attacks, as I said before, and to parry 2 hearts on the first phase, one at the start of the fight and another one just before the next phase. Then, my first invincibility must be activated while I avoid the mice, as a reminder, so my second one can charge on the third phase. If I activate my first super art too late, my second one might not be ready for the final phase, and if a single one of those conditions hasn't been met, I cannot make it through. I know it may seem confusing, but there are so many things that can happen in this stage, along with all the conditions to meet and all the luck that's required all the way through until I finally make it. So, after several hours of pain, it's time to move on to... That's right, Dramatic Fanatic has a secret route. I have attempted it and unfortunately it's impossible without left and right, at least as a single player. I tried beating it by controlling both characters at the same time, and I developed a strategy that might make this route possible with 2 players. The first player needs the coffee, and the second one, the whetstone. At the very start, the second player must dash until they hit Sally, then jump, parry, and dash again to reach the right platform. But of course, if she teleports, it doesn't work. After that, both players have to attack Sally until she sends a heart, granting access to the left platform, which triggers the secret route. Also, make sure not to damage her too much on the first phase. Otherwise, the platforms will go away and the normal second phase will start, or your first invincibility will be ready too soon, and we don't want that. On the second phase, both players must survive, damage Sally as much as possible, and use the invincibility at the right time, just like before. Plenty of precision is required to get through the rulers and the mice, so be careful. Then, we get to the third phase, which I cannot beat, unfortunately. When the meteor comes, both players have to be perfectly aligned with it, so they can open it, parry the pink star, and avoid the big wave. Also, the players must dodge the fireballs and the lightning attack, which can be pretty difficult. As for the final phase, it might be possible if at least one player can use their invincibility. Sadly, since I don't have a second player with me, I cannot beat the secret route during this challenge. I did my best, but I had to give up, because 2 players are better than 1, I'm a human, I have my limits. This video is taking way too long to make, and this secret route is entirely optional anyway. So instead, let's defeat a much simpler boss, Werner Wehrman. I don't have a lot to say about this one, so it will be short. The catapult attack is quite easy to dodge, same for the dash attack. The bombs are a bit tougher to avoid, but nothing extreme. The second phase can be quite challenging, but once again, I'm okay with it. For the final phase, well, what you see is what you get. When the cat attacks on the left, I can get hit by a wooden piece. When it attacks on the right, I can use my invincibility instead. And that's it for this stage. Last but not least, the final boss of the third world, Phantom Express. First off, I have to use the chaser against Blind Spectre and the pumpkins. The left ones are simple to kill, but the right ones are harder to reach because of the eyeballs. I must parry as many bricks as I can because I need one energy beam for this phase and a second one for the next phase. Also, if a brick lands on the right switch, dodging the eyeballs and parrying the bricks become too hard for me. Sure, if I jump at the right time, I can reach the left switch easily, but I prefer to stay safe for the entire stage. After spending nearly a whole minute on this enemy, I can move on to the next one, T-Bone. Here, I have to activate my second energy beam, as mentioned, to take a hit on his first attack and to spam the charge. And no, I cannot avoid this attack no matter when I use my super art. Then, his head must show up on the left for his second attack so I don't get hit again. If he spawns on the right, it will leave me only one health point for the rest of the stage. I have to hurt him with 6 charge shots and I must be precise, especially before his third attack, so I can get to the Blaze Brothers with 2 health points. In the best case, the right brother will attack first, so I won't have to take another hit. However, if the left brother attacks first, I cannot avoid him, but I can still defeat him before he comes back. Also, I have to kill the ghosts while they're not above the right switch, so I can stay on the left. Eventually, we get to the final phase, which I could beat on my first try. Parrying his tail, energy beam, a few chaser bullets, and it's done. And because his heart can damage me, I needed to have a spare health point, so no damage for the entire fight, except for this part. Finally, with my last soul contract in hand, we can reach the final obligatory stage of this challenge, all bets are off. But first, let's collect one last coin. For this stage, there's a specific route to follow before reaching King Dice. I need to fight Chips Petigan, Pip and Dot, and Mangosteen, which means 2, 4, and 8. To increase my chances, I must have a heart on 2 of these mini-bosses, which can take many tries. Also, I want to have 4 health points when I get to King Dice, so we can only take 1 hit before fighting him. My first encounter, Chips Petigan, is pretty simple to deal with. His only troublesome attack is his second one. I need to pause the game to see which chips he sends at the very bottom because of the foreground slightly hiding them. Otherwise, I would only have a split second to decide what to do. Sometimes it works, but most of the time it doesn't. After about 30 seconds, he's done. Next, we have Pip and Dot. This one is also straightforward. All I have to do is to focus on the spikes and the projectiles. My only problem here is the bird domino, which is pretty difficult to defeat without taking damage by accident. Once again, they can be quickly defeated. And finally, the easiest mini-boss of the bunch, Mangosteen. I just have to avoid his projectiles and the chalks, which have very generous hitboxes. And that's all I have to say about him. Now that the board has been cleared, we can get to King Dice himself. As soon as the wall-up shows up, I have to activate my invincibility and to spam the charge. Starting from the second row of cards, I must stay in midair with EX attacks and by parrying pink cards, which isn't simple without left and right. On his third attack, if everything went well, I can give the final blow just in time and officially complete the final mandatory stage of Cuphead. But before we get to the end of the game, let's take a quick look at the other mini-bosses, just for fun. Number 1. Tipsy Troop. Before I get to them, I use the coffee to charge my energy beam, which, of course, takes 2 minutes. Then, after using my super art at the beginning, I have to defeat, in this order, the rum glass, the martini glass, and the whiskey bottle. This one forces me to either dash or take a hit, so his attack basically serves as a time limit. Eventually, I could beat him as well. Number 3. Mr. Wheezy. Once again, I charge my super art before fighting him. For this one, my main problem is the fireballs. Whatever I do, they are unavoidable, so I have to get hit by them. But after using my invincibility, I can just stand in this corner until I win. Number 5. Hocus Pocus. Here, I can either take damage on the skull rings, jump through an opening, or use the smoke bomb to dodge them. As for the card suits, I can parry a pink one if I'm lucky, or I can avoid them with my energy beam. And that's it for this mini-boss. Number 6. Fear Lap. This one is pretty simple, except when the boxes travel across the entire screen, forcing me to defend myself with a super art or to take damage. 30 seconds of fighting and it's already over. Number 7. Piruletta. This one requires the whetstone to bounce on her head, which makes the battle much simpler. When she shoots roulette balls, I can either use a super art if the opening is too far away, or I can stand still if I get lucky. After a few tries, I could beat this one as well. At last, number 9, Mr. Chimes. Alright, now that all bets are off has been completed, we can meet the devil, give him the soul contracts, become his minions, and... Yeah, this is quite an anticlimactic ending, but at least I have proven that Cuphead can be beaten without using left and right in any stage. This was a really fun and very tough journey, and I'm glad I could show it to you guys. But it's not over yet. We have one last thing to do in this challenge. Although it's completely optional, I have decided to fight the devil himself in one hell of a time. And oh my god. We have seen several difficult stages during this challenge, but this one was easily the absolute worst. It took me 11 hours just to beat this one. This is gonna be a complex one, so I hope you're ready. First off, I can use the charge only right below the devil's head, otherwise he's out of range, so I must use the chaser. For his attacks, let's begin with his transformations. When he turns into a ram, I can easily avoid his arms, except if there's a longer delay before they come. When it happens, most of the time, I get hit. When he turns his head into a spider, he can either land next to me or right above me. I'm only given a split second to decide whether I should move or not, so I have to be quick. When he transforms into a serpent, I must stand at the right place to avoid him, which isn't obvious with limited controls. If he uses this attack at the start of the fight, it's different. When he comes from the left, I have to dash and duck fast enough. If he comes from the right, I first have to duck, then, as soon as he retreats, at the exact same moment, I must dash and duck again to avoid taking damage. I cannot dash too early or too late. On top of that, I also have to watch for the purple minions. The serpent attack is where they get really annoying. If they come from the right, it's usually fine, but when they come from behind me, while the devil is already surrounding me, there's nothing I can do. That's already a lot to deal with, but there's also the projectiles that he can summon. The bouncing balls, the easiest ones to deal with, the fireball hexagon, which is much harder to dodge, especially when I'm too close, and the rotating flames, which are really tough to avoid because they constantly move and because I have to deal with other attacks at the same time. And if I'm not lucky, they can spawn right where I am. As you may have guessed, what makes this stage so hard is how unpredictable it is. Just like for Dramatic Fanatic, every attempt is different because of the RNG. But eventually, when I finally beat the first phase, I need to move towards the hole, then wait for my super meter to charge with the coffee for the last time. When it's almost full, I can jump down and begin the second phase. While the axe attack is simple to dodge, it's a bit more complicated with the bat bomb. If it spawns on the left, I can easily parry it. However, if it shows up on the other side, it can move left and right and blow up without hurting me, or it can do the exact opposite and... As for the falling chips, I have to get hit by one of them without dying, because I prefer to dash during the second part of this phase. Speaking of which, this is where the battle turns into absolute chaos. At this point, many things can ruin my chances to win, such as getting killed by a fat demon, or a flying monster, or using too many EX attacks and being unable to activate my invincibility for the final part, or accidentally pushing myself towards an enemy, or not being able to reach the middle platform when I'm stuck between projectiles, or getting to the second phase with 3 health points, taking 2 damage knockbacks and either being stuck on a demon, or being too far from the middle platform to land on it. But finally, when I get to the last part, there is no time to waste. I have to keep on shooting before I get killed by yet another chip. And eventually, after 11 hours of struggle, So, is it possible to beat Cuphead without using left and right? Absolutely! With the exception of the plain tutorial, Rocked Ridge, the secret route of Dramatic Fanatic with a single player, and Mr. Chimes, every single stage of the game can be beaten with these conditions. I wonder how many times I died during this challenge. If you want to try this challenge by yourself, don't forget about my strategy guide in the description below. It explains in details how to beat each stage with my own method. As for me, I'll see you again when the delicious last course finally releases. Until then, bye bye!